Oh, okay. This is going to be an excerpt from the Joint House Inquiry 9/11. Tim Roemer is interviewing Lee Hamilton, the co-chair of the 9/11 Commission, but he's also the director of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. So it's not a long video, but see what happens.
Congressman Roemer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome all three of you here today. You've really been extremely helpful to us in helping us look forward and help us try to come up with some answers to some of these very vexing and complicated problems. Congressman Hamilton, I want to especially welcome you before the committee as both a colleague from Indiana and a good personal friend. We welcome your very extensive testimony. I want to quote back from a line in your testimony, which I think is extremely important to us today with the current threat that we have in the world, and as we may be going into Iraq to do something about weapons of mass destruction. Your quote is, "If we were starting all over again, and I cannot imagine we would create such a vast enterprise and have no one clearly in charge," unquote. And we still have that system out there today. What do you think specifically we can do about this problem?
Wow. What can we do about the problem? A number of changes, starting with the bureaucrats leading the offices of our intelligence community. There are a number of intelligence communities. In fact, there are 16 just inside the United States. You have the, and I'll name them: the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, Army INSCOM, which is the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, Air Force Intelligence with the 25th Air Force, Office of Naval Intelligence, one of the oldest, I think it is the oldest, Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, Coastal Guard Intelligence and Criminal Investigations Enterprise, Central Intelligence Agency, Drug Enforcement Administration, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Intelligence and Research, which is part of the State Department, Office of Intelligence and Analysis, which is the Treasury Department's DIA, OIA, excuse me, Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence, which is the Department of Energy's in focus on terrorism threats, and of course, the National Reconnaissance Office. Now, I don't have the time to talk about what each agency needs in regards to improvement. I think the biggest area in which we need to concentrate on are coexistence or data sharing within each agency. Now, when I say that, there also has to be regulations involving that sharing of data. It can't be just shared freely. It can't be collected freely. That's what's happening now, right? For example, the NSA can collect your metadata, which is your phone calls, your text messages, your emails, any type of online communication, any type of viral communication. That is collected by the NSA without a warrant. And they used the 9/11 attacks as the pretext for this to protect your safety from the next terrorist. So we need oversight regarding each agency. And they do, they have their own Inspector General reports regarding the conduct and the investigations thereof in which they investigate. So that would be my main concern would be that. Let's see what Hamilton has to say.
And how big a problem?
because he can have a different answer.
Problem is it?
I think it's a very large problem. I think you have two basic options. The one option is to try to strengthen the DCI.
Well, there you go, right? The Director of Central Intelligence, right? So the CIA, it's no surprise Hamilton would select them first because, Lee Hamilton has a long history with the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, Lee Hamilton was on the committee investigating Iran-Contra. That's how far back Lee Hamilton goes. And we all know about Iran-Contra, which was the CIA was actually involved in that, actively involved in arming the Sandinistas and involving themselves with a trade for guns and drugs and money and drugs, and involved center of the Pentagon and State Department, and everybody just feigned ignorance and said, we didn't know what was going on in our name. We didn't know what was going on here and there. Meanwhile, they knew to an extent what one was doing with the other. Maybe not to the specific incidents, but they knew.
And I certainly don't oppose that effort because I think that needs to be done. I also think it's a very incrementalist approach that we've been trying for many years, and we've never been really satisfied with the results we've gotten.
You would have been in regards to September 11, 2001, and you probably know this better than anyone, Lee, because you were the co-chair of the 9/11 Commission. You would know that the CIA, if they had done their job, if they didn't intentionally obstruct from the sharing of information with the FBI regarding two Al-Qaeda subjects inside the United States pre 9/11, 9/11 probably wouldn't have happened. Or at least Flight 77 probably wouldn't have been hijacked, right? The FBI would have, if they would have shared the information with the FBI would have conducted a proper investigation regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and that would have been inside the United States. And by the way, incidentally, both men lived with an FBI informant whose code name was Stan, and his real name was Abdus Sheikh, and I did a live video discussion about him. And you can look at that video for a lengthier explanation as to that specific incident. But yeah, I mean, the CIA definitely doesn't need a bigger budget, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
The other option is
because they do have a huge budget.
to go to a director of national intelligence that I've been arguing for, and obviously there's some problems with that as well. But those are the two options, and I think you have to make a choice between them. The criticism, I favor the Director of National Intelligence. The criticism that Judge Webster and others have made is that it may not, I think Fred as well may not be realistic. There's something to that criticism. I mean, I understand it's a very tough thing to achieve.
Congressman, you were just...
But Mr. Roemer, may I just say that we're in a new period, and we've simply got to think anew here.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And we've got to put aside the way we've always done business. And the way we've always done business is if we give a little extra power to the DCI, things are going to be okay. It's not going to be okay.
Right. But I mean, at the same time, you know, the CIA is crying broke, right? Because all throughout the 9/11 Commission, throughout the Joint House inquiry, the two congressional inquiries into the investigation of September 11, 2001, you've had Director Tenet basically crying foul because the agency couldn't do their job properly because their budget needs to be expanded. That means they need to make more offices. Cofer Black, the former director of the Counterintelligence Center, we didn't have enough manpower to concentrate on terrorism. Not just abroad, but here in the United States. The director of operations, James Pavitt. Oh, we didn't have necessary intelligence because we didn't have enough manpower because our budget is too small. I mean, this is repetitive. And by the way, you know, they're not the only agency doing this. The NSA, the FBI, all employing the committees. We need more. And of course they would need more. A bigger agency means more intelligence, more information gathering, more information collecting, less sharing. He who hoards the information has the power.
We're just talking about
And that's the truth.
the creation of a Homeland Security Department where we all would probably have our complaints or criticisms about this part or that part, but it's an attempt by the administration to centralize power and agencies, disparate agencies under one roof. That's what you're suggesting here as well.
That's correct. I'm looking for a way to improve, I guess, visibility and accountability in the intelligence community. I've gotten to the place where the very phrase intelligence community I dislike because it's too vague. And one of the great problems in government always is accountability and getting someone to take the responsibility, and I'm looking for that. But I really think the quality of your intelligence will improve if you have a single person over all aspects of the intelligence community and have responsibility for budgeting and personnel. I'm going to comment on Senator Graham's business on personnel in a moment.
Yeah, well, okay, now this is, I hear what you're saying regarding someone needs to hold these agencies accountable. Now, what we have is the United States Intelligence Community Oversight, which are shared by the executive and legislative branches of government. And in this case is the supervision of the intelligence agencies and making them accountable for their actions. Well, when it comes to September 11, 2001, who is held accountable? I mean, we already know through the public record that the CIA intentionally withheld information. Now, I posted the video regarding Carl Levin, and I did a podcast about this because I think this is important regarding the CIA willfully holding information from the FBI regarding Al-Qaeda subjects who conducted terrorism on U.S. targets, especially from the military, regarding because they were considered involved at some level, the USS Cole bombing and the East Africa bombings, a U.S. embassy and a naval warship. And they withheld that information. And where was the Inspector General report regarding the CIA? They covered for them. The U.S. Intelligence Community oversight from the executive, legislative branches and the committee hearings, groups like the Office of Inspector General and the National Security Council. They feigned ignorance. And nobody was held responsible. This is the point. Now, what Hamilton is saying is that we need an oversight branch that's not catering to the federal or legislative branch. Well, who the hell is going to run this? The people? You think these people in executive and legislative power are going to allow the common folk like you and me to hold independent inquiries regarding malfeasance or even criminality? Hell no. That's a pipe dream, and Hamilton knows it. So, yeah, I think we can rest assured that will never happen.
Respect to
Never happen in any lifetime. God forbid.
again for Congressman Hamilton, with respect to the need for a creation of an independent commission, how do you feel about that?
I favor it. I think that I come from the point of view that we need more, not less, oversight of the intelligence community that is independent of the executive branch.
I agree with him.
And I think this committee has performed a very important service in the last few months and weeks.
Right, but you know as well as I know, because this is armchair quarterbacking, of course, right? But in Hamilton's shoes, he had to have known that the 9/11 Commission, the Joint House Inquiry, were there for show. Oh yeah, there was a level of dishonesty at some level, but we're not going to hold anybody accountable. We're just going to ignore the real alarming anomalies involving a much bigger conspiracy involving many players. And we're going to allow the FBI to clean up afterwards. And we're going to give the NSA a pass because they're the ones who are holding all the metadata. And we're going to have the CIA and the FBI basically fall on the sword, so to speak. But we're not going to fire anybody. We're not going to hold anybody accountable. And nobody did. Now, that's not to say that the committee here, like Tim Roemer or Bob Graham, co-chair of the Joint Inquiry, or Nancy Pelosi or Carl Levin, these guys were all in on it and they just covering up. You know, these guys are led by the director, which is Eleanor Hill. And the 9/11 Commission had their director, Philip Zelikow, who has a much more nefarious background because he's an extension of the State Department under George Bush and good friend to National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, part of the Vulcans, the neoconservative faction in the White House. So they obstructed a proper investigation into 9/11. And, you know, they, of course, they investigated millions of files. I think it was over 1.3 million files, but they classified a million more. And a lot of those committee members, panelists, weren't allowed to look at certain information. And they begged for redactions of certain files and documents, and they got ignored. And the players involving the foreign intelligence community of Saudi Arabia and Israel, they weren't there to be investigated because they were all deported back to their respective countries immediately after 9/11. The station chief of Alex Station, Richard Blee, and the head of the Yemen hub, the chief of Yemen hub, Michelle Ann Casey, they couldn't be interviewed because they were in Afghanistan, taking over for Operation Jawbreaker, which was an operation by the CIA and US Central Command in capturing or killing bin Laden, in which he escaped. And they could have killed him. So yeah, nobody's held responsible. That's the point here.
But I don't think you've finished the job. I think there's a lot more to be done. It's terribly important how we go about this. We ought not to be saying, I'm looking for somebody to blame. We ought to be looking ahead and saying, what were the problems in the system?
Right. Oh, wow. What a real, right? No, we can't blame George Tenet, for example. We can't blame George Tenet for obstructing federal investigation and data sharing. We can't hold him. Even though we can. And he lied. He lied about the daily visits to George Bush in the month of August to 9/11 Commission, specifically to Tim Roemer. When he asked him how many times did he visit the ranch, he said none. Meanwhile, he visited him 3 times. One of the CIA analysts at Counterterrorism Center, Clark Shannon, basically telling FBI agent Steve Bongard and Dina Corsi, who are these people in the pictures at the Malaysia meeting. He's fishing for information to see what the FBI knew. And if they didn't know, good. Because we're conducting a covert operation not involving you, even though these men are dangerous. And he told the Joint Inquiry that he was told by Director Tenet not to share information with the FBI. And what did George Tenet say? No, that's not what he told me. But he did. That's what Tenet told Clark Shannon. And I could get into Alfreda Ambikowski basically saying that we shared the information with the FBI because I walked it on over to the FBI office. Meanwhile, you have to log in, and there was no login for any Alfreda Ambikowski. And she just basically stuck to her life. Say, I walked it in and shared that information. She lied. They're all liars. Certain ones, anyway. Certain ones. I shouldn't say all of them. Certain ones. Because there are some good people. I mean, you had a lot of whistleblowers with the FBI pre 9/11. And they're the ones who got railroaded.
That brought about the shortcomings and how can we correct them. Now, you and I know that there are a lot of commissions in this town, some good, some bad, some indifferent. So it makes all the difference who you put on the commission. And I think there are a lot of good Republicans, and I think there are a lot of good Democrats who can serve effectively on this commission and do the service, do the country well, a great service. I don't worry about a little redundancy here or a little overlap. Indeed, I think it's probably good because it's hard to get this town to move on anything, and you need a lot of people looking at any given problem. I know you've been a primary supporter of this in the House. I applaud that effort. I also understand the hesitation of the Bush administration, and maybe some of you here, about this, and you'll say, well, this is going to be used to hang us or point out people who made big mistakes. I don't see it that way at all. And but we do have to be sensitive to that concern, I believe. But I think.
Can you imagine? Now I'm going to stop it there, right? Can you imagine going into you're a victim, a loved one who has been killed, right? Say your sibling has been murdered, and you have the lawyers, the prosecution basically telling the judge, we're really not concerned about naming names. We just want to know how to correct the mistakes that were made, and so that they can't be made in the future, right? I mean, you would be crying outrage at this point, right? You'd be well understood, right? You'd be understood about that. You know, the problem with intelligence communities is that they themselves are operating on faith by the federal government and faith by the people it serves, that they are going to act in the interests of the people. And more oftentimes than not, they're not. Not when it comes to greater geopolitical strategy and goals. And Hamilton mentions that we need to centralize the intelligence community and to expand the DCI. And I'm very critical of the CIA. I think they're a criminal organization. Not everybody in the agency is a criminal, but I think the bureaucrats certainly are. And if they really were for the people, by the people, they wouldn't be conducting illegal coups, civil wars, lying to the media, using the media to promote lies and disinformation, decentralizing or destabilizing countries in Central America, in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East. And they wouldn't be so covert about their finances. In 1999, the Federation of American Scientists, based in Washington, D.C., have been trying to make the intelligence community reveal their annual budgets to the public. Because as I mentioned, I named 16 agencies just in the United States, right? Some of those agencies are transparent. Most of them are not. But when they pressured the DCI to reveal their finances in 1997 and 1998, through enormous pressure backed by certain congressmen in Washington, the officials from the Budget Accounting Office of the CIA revealed, as well as a number of different agencies like the Office of the NSA, the Army Intelligence Directorate, the FBI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and there was a number of others. I think it was like 9 or 10 of the 16. gave their the fiscal year budgets of 1997 and 1988. And it was, in 1997, it was 26 billion. And in 1998, it was 26.8 billion. And that was in 1997 and 1998. The CIA was not as forthcoming. But I'm going to share with you an article regarding the NSA and CIA's budget reveals, just these two agencies. I'll share the screen with you. US, and by the way, this article came out in August 29, 2018. This is the Guardian. US intelligence spending has doubled since 9/11, top secret budget reveals. US spending on intelligence has doubled since 9/11, with the National Security Agency and the CIA taking the biggest share, according to the top secret budget leaked by the former NSA contractor, Edward Snowden. Details of the $52.6 billion request for 2013 by America's 16 spy agencies. The NSA had requested 10 billion from Congress, while the CIA is asking for 14 billion. But the NSA, having been regarded as the most productive of the spy agencies, so the higher spending by the CIA is some of the biggest surprises in the 4-volume, 1,452-page budget. The congressional budget justification for the National Intelligence Program, dubbed the Black Budget, offers insights into new projects as well as the successes and failures of the spy agencies. Those are enormous amounts of money that they are asking for. Now, what did I tell you during the video, right? And I've said this before, that the CIA and the NSA, they cry broke. We need more money. We need more expansion. Look, you see, don't you want to prevent another 9/11? Well, and they're like whores. They'll flaunt their stuff and, beg their Johns at the Congress regarding their specific agencies deserving more than most about their depleted budget needs to be replenished. And this is really, it's just a joke at this point regarding the intelligence communities basically crying foul. Meanwhile, if we had enough manpower and intelligence, so say the director of DCI, George Tenet, or the director, say Michael Hayden, or the director of the FBI, Robert Mueller, and they're all saying, if we had enough manpower, and if we had a bigger budget, we could have done our jobs. Guess what? They had the intelligence. With the limited manpower that they had, allegedly limited, they had the intelligence to stop 9/11 from happening, to stop the 1998 East Africa bombings from happening. Or the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Now, the top 5 agencies regarding federal spending, and I'm going to share this with you from Pew Research, are these agencies. Let me make my screen a little bit smaller so you could see for yourself. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. Now, the Central Intelligence Agency, which, by the way, the agency fiscal budget year since 2004, as you can see, this is 2004 right here. Here's 2013, right? So the budget gradually gone up. Okay. National Security Agency, 53%. From 2004, went up gradually in 9 years, 10 years. National Reconnaissance Office, 12%. Up and down. The National Geospatial Intelligence Program, excuse me, I have a New York accent, our vowels are pronounced. 108%, because in 2004, they basically, some moderate development. And the General Defense Intelligence Program from the Department of Defense, 3%. So you can see the two primary agencies, like I said before in the Guardian article, with these two: Central Intelligence and National Security Agency, signals intelligence, human intelligence. These agencies, important as they are, not as black as these are, not as shady as these are. And so I'll end it there regarding today's video. I'll see you in the next one.